everyone to another episode of Future of Data newscast. Today is week 31, so that means it's a newsletter week, and we are back with some interesting stuff to share, to interesting news to talk about, some interesting insights that Tao has shared with us this week. And let's begin. Maria, how are you?
I'm doing good, Michelle. How are you doing?
Good,
There's
good,
a
good.
yeah,
How?
lots happening. Things are fast paced, and um, there are conferences and events and all things happening, and things have been busy. I actually will be speaking at All Things Open in
Nice.
October, so I did
Nice.
get news of that. And
That's awesome.
OpenCon is coming up, and I've applied there, and I think that's in later in the year as well. But all these uh, conferences and things that are going on, and the information that's coming through, it's a lot. But we take it
Nice.
one at a time, one day at a
Yes,
time.
yes, yes, yes. And Maria, don't tell it to anyone. We are rolling out another version of Tau. So let's not make it
This is
public
great
yet.
news. Great news
This is
every day. I love it.
this is yes. This is only for our podcast audience. So we are making, I think probably by the end of this month we are releasing Tau with some surprises. So I think you would love it.
Great. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yes. So let's jump quickly on the newsletter. What's here this week? What do you think? Cover of the week.
Yeah, this is a sensitive one, I think. But it is at the same time, we got to be aware about the situation and what we're dealing with, and so our environment, that's what it is. So we have a little cartoon
Yes.
where
So
he steals back the data that was stolen from him.
that's actually and I think maybe this week's theme is security. I think we have
Yeah, it is.
tons of stuff on security. I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. So yeah, so for our audience, so I think it's another Dilbert cartoon in which Dilbert is telling his boss that hey, we lost all of our company data and our backups too. And then he suggests that so I hacked into our government secret database where they keep record of everything, and now we just recovered everything. So he said, the boss said, I feel as if I should be doing something now, and Dilbert says, nah, everything is working fine. So this is data security, as Maria rightly said. It's a very sensitive topic.
Yeah. Well, it just
How we
like
should know.
seems never ending because there's always new threats and there's always new risks, and so there will always be a need for, help to solve those problems.
That's true, and I think it's interesting to see um, for something like government, right? Who pretty much mandates the trade and policy and legal sort of regulation. Security is not their core competency, and they're relying primarily on the vendors or their outreach folks to be knowing their stuff. It's funny, like pretty much they decide what to secure and how to regulate, and then they are the one probably are the most vulnerable among like enterprise can sort of they still have a smaller problem, but governments and the kind of data they're dealing with, the kind of sort of that's not their core competency, and the people who are involved in government are again very not very tech savvy in
Yeah.
many contexts. So it's interesting.
Yeah, they're just getting the training that they need. There's much slower processes and you know,
So
so it does.
you have worked with the city, Maria. So what has been your experience?
Yes, we want to have as much consensus from departments as possible, and so this also takes time. So
Right,
I would say that is like one of the biggest key things. Everyone wants to rush a quick fix, but
right.
we need the checks and balances to make sure that the biases, also are not getting in the way, and that there are other things that are not going. So I can see, the perspective of having so much of the checks and balances, but at the same time, things will just take time. And and people on general level, people just have a hard time with change. And so these processes that have been around for a long time are still, enacted, while the technology and while the talent has, leveled up since then.
Right. I
So,
think that's interesting. So I was talking to, and we had a podcast about that. So I was talking to EPA's chief data officer, and I was conversing him that how difficult it is for something like government. Government works from political season to political season, right? So election to election. So every time the politics and the mandates that comes with the politics, how can you build a robust business when every 4 year your core competency might just be totally different, and how you can build something
yeah.
that is that secure when the guidelines that you're working on probably, so one party is saying something and the other is saying different, and we'll be in a luck if we get sort of consistent party for some time, so at least things get robust on one side. It's just the flip cycle that, and then many of these parties pretty much untangle or undo the previous ones if they are different in their affiliation.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was,
And
I
some of
think.
these processes take, whatever bill or policy that was put in place or voted upon takes 2 years to even,
Right. Oh, it's I
come
think
into
it's
fruition for people to even see, like, oh, this is happening now.
it's I think it's fascinating, and kudos to everyone who's working in the government sector, trying to secure the infrastructure there. I think it's a very difficult problem to make government work and give them all the cool toys that enterprise have access to, so they can do their job properly, and keeping our data secure, because that's true. I'm relying on government to know their thing, that they're keeping my data secure, and this is pretty much the Dilbas cartoon is just attack on that. That hey, if
Yeah.
it's weird.
Yeah,
Anyhow, let's.
and safety is really, an important issue everyone is passionate about, so it's
Yes,
safety, and we have so many versions and illusions of safety we need to, try to get more accurate about, and so it's going to take time.
I agree, and I think let's jump to the next analytics week bites. So these are some of the blogs from our platform that we wrote, our team wrote, or we sourced it from some of our interesting partners to push it out. So slightly detour. So it's about, I think, data driven. I think that's the theme of pretty much all the from whatever I've captured. So one of the blogs, dreaming of being data driven, a case for central data office, and I think this was one of the write up that I wrote from one of the conversation. Actually, I was working with a client during that time, and like I was pretty much immersed in a very internal battle of selling them the idea of center of excellence, and
Mm,
there was sort of a lot of pushback on, hey, let's not talk about center of excellence, um, and it was all cultural pushback. So no, this won't work, it would cost too much, it would be very long, it will be a longer initiative for someone to pursue. So I said, no, 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 take a deep breath, and I said, just go to a yoga class maybe. But I think but the drill is just to relax, just deep breathe, and you need to do this because at some point when this would be your core competency, there's no escape. And I think pretty much I laid out 4 or 5 suggestion, I guess, at that point, of like what are some of the bullet things that you could do, having say I think more transparency and understanding your workers, understanding your, so know your data, know your site, like processes and something like that, just laying out to very simplistic manner, and I sent that blog to one of the like two of the stakeholders there. I said, let's
hmm
just read this, and I'll come and we'll chat, and we end up sort of executing something like this. But it was an interesting bite.
Yeah, I like how when you're talking about like who owns the data, because you have all these responsibilities that come with the data that you might not think about until you get to that part of the process where you
Hmm.
have to, think about it.
That's true.
And so policies, like certain policies and certain things like especially working with open data,
Hmm.
we had a lot to consider. Even with maps and so forth, that we're making sure we didn't violate any policies at the same time as sharing as much as we could. You know,
Right.
so
That's
I
true.
like when you're talking about open, like the ownership of the data because of the
Hmm.
responsibilities that come with the with secure, like what we were talking about, securing it and making sure, that it's accurate or also clean.
Right. No, I think yes, yes, absolutely. And I think so. The next one, the next blog talks about it's another Analytics Week pick, and it talks about big data is no longer confined to the big business playbook. And I think this was very interesting read on how basically democratizing all the technologies and capabilities make the technology so accessible. And I think many times, so I remember like in back in 2015, I think I used to hear a lot that no, it's I don't have that much of money to undertake a big data project or something. It was like we were into a lot of those conversation, and as the
Mm-hmm.
time sort of grew, people understood that thanks to infrastructure costs coming down radically, that and then open source community pitching in, the education of the market has gone a lot easier, and businesses now
Mm-hmm.
are less anxious about so I think it's a funny journey of how
Yeah.
actually now it's no longer for big businesses. Very true. What do you think, Maria?
Yeah, I think you definitely bring awareness to the fact that people are using data for decision making all the time for all
Right.
the different kinds of things. And you don't need to be some PhD scientist, although they're respected for their level of detail in the process of how to research and study. But we have the scientific method, which on a basic level, naturally we do anyway when we're learning, right? That's how we uh, interacted with our environment as children, and we can expound upon that to use that for all kinds of decisions that we have to make on a regular basis. And some of these things, if you're in venturing into entrepreneurship, or you're venturing into trying to research things, and there is enough discoveries to make, for people to be interested in, these methods are going to be need to be more available and accessible so that they know the models and they can kind of figure out what works best with the situation that they're trying to measure. I know that's
Right.
a little bit of a
No.
ramble, but I really like this article and picking out like how we can do this on so many different levels.
Right. No, I think I totally agree with you. It's a very good, again, it's a very good a transformational article of, so if you are going to transform, I think I love these kind of articles because they keep it low on tech, and they pretty much attack the business side of things and say what really need to sort of understand and list before you execute something like that. I think that's again a lovely article. And even the third
Yeah.
one, so okay, yeah, sorry, Maria.
Then I was just going to say, like, the next one seemed to be just a business case to back that up. So Tao did pretty good job, like, rolling with the
That's actually
choice.
that's actually pretty. Yeah, I agree. Can big data tell us what clinical trials don't? Maria, you rightly picked up. I think this is one of the very efficient use case. And in fact, I think on July 4th weekend when I went, I actually went with a couple of friends from pharmaceutical industry, and we had a good discussion on using of these AI and big data capabilities like fixing clinical trials. And actually, very interestingly, they were hesitant in many of these insights. So I think one of their worry was knowing something that we're not supposed to know, right?
Yeah,
So that's I think that's the and it's interesting, right? So on one side, it's I think it's more to do with ethical dilemma, right? So
yeah.
I was my case was you should like if you realize you know something that you shouldn't late in the game, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of impact already out in the market, and maybe you can't sustain some impact, right? If it's negative, if it's positive, again you want to get to that impact quickly rather than late, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the faster you know, the more you can do to react on that. And it was like it was interesting to have such And I think we were, I think, about four guys, four sort of um, folks from pharmaceutical in that, and it was, the consensus was 100% that
Hmm.
it's that's the concern, that knowing something that we're not supposed to know. So I said, wow, that's interesting.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know, I like, this article is amazing, I like, contrary, so this article talks about learning health system and what all it can do, I think. So we know data can do a lot.
Yeah. And that just makes it more sensitive, I think, because you're saying, like you're saying, some of those things may be things that are information that's helpful, and then someone has a perspective that it shouldn't be shared. And so, you get into that. And as people are needing to figure out more clues, at least to get so that they can make better decisions, also, they're going
Right.
to have to try different things. So I like that, this article referenced a case where that happened, and it was a success,
Right.
to do that.
That's true, and I think, and one thing I was thinking about is also the cultural differences, right? So what if, so now the cultural of new breed of data science professionals, they believe in sharing, they believe in more collaboration. So I think one of the thing definitely I was seeing the need of is the cultural shift, right? So whenever I hear this argument of, oh, what if something might be uncovered which we're not supposed to, I think that's all cultural sort of bottlenecks that as a business we all have to deal with, because
Mm-hmm.
when the time is the name of the game, how rapidly you can respond to a situation, I think you
Hmm.
have to be at the top of the game, right? So
Yeah,
it's, I
that's
think
true.
it's, I'm hoping with, I think with more sort of cultural, as new breed join in and taking this data science projects and this corporation and their strategy and business thinking, w- at the end of the day we will be translate or transforming in that direction of more data driven and sort of understanding that would be interesting actually.
Yeah, well, I think it's like you said there. That's true. The millennial generation is going to think differently, and they have all kinds of consumer habits that are different to where companies and businesses are having to, rack their brains to figure out how to reach and connect with them. So there's definitely going to be there's already been so much attention put on it. And the way that they're doing things or thinking differently, I think it also allows us to be more open, like you said,
Right.
with these things. And so I'm excited to see, what more collaboration can come.
That's true, and I think now let's talk about the news bites. So I think first article was guide to the top university and colleges where cyber security degree program is are being conducted. I think that, again, if you're looking to
Right.
transition into data
Cybersecurity.
science, I think, and data security, very good read. It just lists on which programs they do what and what you can do to improve. What do you think, Maria?
Yeah, it shows you, also what their curriculum is focusing on. So you have some of the top few colleges there that you can choose what
Right.
interest you want to be, because it's, crosses a great number of divisions, of different industries. So
Right, right. So, and the other one is, it's about a breach that happened. I think it's a good read if you don't know what. So I think so Showtix for you is a site that sells tickets. Okay. So it just lists about what all was the hack, and I think this this is an interesting article on what exactly a security breach could do to you. I think that's fascinating to see a hack being done in numbers. What really it translates to. And again, I think one of the podcasts I recently recorded, we should be posting that podcast sometime early next month or at the end of end of this month, on security. What's the enterprise outlook? And I think do keep an eye out on that podcast. It covers many of the mindset changes that are required to sort of undertake this initiative of keeping enterprise secure, and what all mindset is needed to sort of go in, because it's again it's a very I think it's one of the areas. So I was talking to this guy, and I was we were talking about how enterprise is almost like security team is almost like what lawyers are today, right? Hey, don't do this, don't do that, uh, follow the steps. But typically businesses are designed to take shortcuts. Businesses are designed to be creative, and the more creative you get, the more less or less predictable your steps are. So it's difficult for the security team to secure you if you're less predictable, right? Because if IT loves predictability and businesses hate predictability, right? So now
Yeah.
when you have this battle between the two, if there's no business, there's no IT, right? That's their
Right.
argument. And we had a great conversation around, why don't I just throw money at this problem and just assume that I'll be hacked, and this much would be, and get the insurance done for that much, right? Instead of fixing and getting paranoid about the security. And we had a good conversation. I think this is,
Huh.
but it was a very interesting conversation. Okay,
Yeah, you
so
could probably have talk about that one for a long, long time because I mean, like Tao's bringing up all of the different articles. There's just so many different ways to attack to talk to look at it.
right, right. So let's talk about, so the next one is, I think it's a research report, social media analytics market by way of study, synthesis, and summation. So this is one of the interesting report from on global social media and analytics market. The prediction from I think 2017 to 2021.
Yeah, it seems
And
intense.
it's,
It
oh
seems really
yes,
intense.
I think what I'm always amazed about, at least anything in social media, is how the hell can you predict anything there? Like, it's every year there's a new social network. Every year there's like 10 social networks that are probably dying. The
Yeah,
trend is changing, the humanity is changing, broadband access is changing.
yeah,
How can you predict when change is the only constant, right?
right.
How can you, it's funny, like it's and I think it, yeah, I think love to know,
I wonder if there's anyone that goes back through to the predictions of, I'm sure someone does, but the predictions of, the last 5 or 10 years and see if how accurately we're keeping up with those things in
well
social media
oh
or,
yes,
the internet and so forth.
I,
Net
I think
neutrality, all that.
it's I think it's we are in, and I used to follow some of these. I think we are hilariously off in many of
Yeah.
these. I think in some cases, like, we were like totally different direction, and in some cases, like, so I remember that this was like one of the, I think during my grad days, we're doing some research on Blu-ray. How amazing is Blu-ray, and how this would go more efficient and all that, and Ultra HD, like Ultra VCD or something, would be like, there would be ultra high capacity CD or something, and we were like bullish on this market and all that, right? And then the internet happened, and now the entire Netflix is it's just killing. It's just like, I, I I've
Yeah,
never
like
seen any.
remember when Blockbuster was on every corner kind of deal?
Oh, oh man, it's like, it's difficult. It's difficult to predict that. I have never seen a Blu-ray for, like, I have bought a Blu-ray, and this guy was eating dirt. I think it's just, I don't even know whether someone is selling Blu-ray nowadays, but it's, I think that's the prediction. It's like, it's hilariously off. Like, you can just, oh man, and even in, I think the plasma TV one, I think there was lot of debacle on how plasma TV is going to, it's more efficient, it's blah 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 blah, and then the LCD and the OLED and AMOLED, I think it's just, it's ridiculous where
Yeah,
we are heading with that.
yeah.
So
I mean, we try, right? They
I
try.
think so. I think that's why I had sort of chuckles when I hear about social media, because social media is almost like gadgets, right? Today. So will
Yeah.
there be a smartwatch or will there be whatever, right? A big dial 3 pounder watch or something. So it's hilarious that. But yeah, I think you got people. Businesses love prediction, so they're just getting it.
Yeah. And then we have the featured course, the deep learning prerequisite, the Nubby stack in Python.
Yes.
And I was looking at the reviews of this because, I liked how it talked about in the very beginning. It was like, these are the things that you need to know. And if you don't know how to use these models or what they're for, then, you need another course, basically,
Right.
to get on with this one. And so I was reading the reviews and, a lot of good reviews on how clear and concise the course was and efficient and to get through. So it's a free course.
I think I have a hunch on what Tao is doing in this, and maybe I think it just Tao is cheating here. I think he's just or Tao is just asking because I think one thing I have noticed across like after a couple of iterations, all of these courses are highly rated ones.
Yeah.
I want to see a lousy course, right? So hey, this I don't know, like it's not, although it's not programmed to look for lousy content, but I think I would love to see some
Like
diversity.
maybe a comparison would be good. Like, here's a course that you do want to take, and here's the kind that you don't. And maybe like
No,
some
even
reason.
like it's. I think it's almost like diversity, right? So I and this I have seen from my personal experience. No matter how amazing of a speaker you are, half of the guys would be sleeping, anyways,
Mm.
right? So and then rest half of them folks are figuring out when they can go home or whatever, right? So from that perspective, it's my hunch is like like however lousy you can get, like they should have some diversity, like some it's funny, like I want to see if Tao can come up with the say 2 rated or something and people hated this for whatever reason and just say, hey, I'm sorry, like I just found this lousy one, but the topic is good. It's a trend because Tao knows about trends, so it knows
Yeah,
that what the hell is happening around and what, so it's trained something.
yeah,
So
I
but
agree.
again, good course. So as Maria you rightly said, if you need to create machine learning, this is, I think this is one of the fastest way. And they're not using too advanced of a mathematics, by the way. So they're using basic linear algebra there, and then it is not meant for. It's not super non-technical. It is somewhat technical because obviously you need to program to create a machine learning algorithm, but it's, I think the language is simple enough, and I think if I would say, even if you hate to code, just go through this course. I think it's good to know, create something out of your, like with your hands, and then you actually can see, like then you can, whenever you are in the conversation of what machine learning could do, you could have a lot meaningful discussion. So I think it's just a couple of hours well spent, and then voila, like you have created your first machine learning algorithm or something.
Yeah,
So
you'll
from that
definitely
perspective, it's
know more of what applies with what,
right, exactly, and then I think, and yeah, I think, and Python is amazing. NumPy stack is, so NumPy, SciPy, Panda. I think it's, they're all, that's one of the side of doing stuff, and I'm glad this time Tao has not presented anything with R, because
No,
I
not
think
this time.
I was thinking that many times you just say, hey, take a course on R, but read a book on Python or whatever,
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
and just kill yourself or whatever. So this time it was, I think this was like much better this time. That okay, you can live, and
yeah.
I'm seeing they have done a redo on the book again.
Yeah,
So research
fourth
design,
edition.
yes, but I think any, so I don't mind it. I think it's a beautiful book. Research. So I think how to design a research. So this is one of the good books. So I think John Cresswell is he's a industry psychologist, I guess. And his background is into figuring out how to design a survey and what data to capture, how to capture, and all that. And
I think he
good
references a
recommendation.
lot like the basics, and so it's really important on a lot of levels because everybody needs to know at least those things, how to collect the data, and how to think about how to do the process.
Right, and maybe I think last time we talked about sensors, right? The sensors data and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm yeah. Someone has to fix or make good surveys. Otherwise, I think the world is full of lousy. I think last week I got from one of my telecom provider a survey, and it has like about 30 questions or something. It was like painful. I said, "What the hell? Like, who gives a 30 question survey?"
Wow.
So world is still needing some justice
You might have felt
on.
like you were doing the Myers-Briggs right
So
there.
yeah, I think maybe next time if I get something, I'll just forward this book to them and say just sure. But maybe next time, this time I'll give it a pass. But maybe if you read this and fix your survey, maybe I can. It's
Yeah.
interesting. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's get to the keeping biases checked during last mile of decision making. This is, I think, um, this is a beautiful uh, thought. So I think so. There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. Have you read that book?
No, but it sounds
So
interesting already.
it's I think it's a fascinating book that like if you overanalyze vis-a-vis if you underanalyze, right? So you need just enough information
Yeah.
to decide better. Like if you too quickly decide something. So one of the example that um, so I think this particular thought about keeping biases checked talks about biases, and I think biases is one of the thing that's it's killing us as
Hmm.
analysts. So I think so one of the example that at least thinking fast and slow. I think it's during that I wrote this article. So they they talked about so they took two sets of people, and one side they just gave them numbers in tens, so 20, 70, 80, 50, 70, or whatever. And the next set they give number in 5,000, 8,000, 9,000, 12,000, and they ask both the group to predict a next number or predict a number. So the first set just predicted like 117, and the other groups predicted in 17,000 or something. So their perception was that although they were told specifically uh, not to go in the same order, but just think of a number. But they pretty much so the biases were there.
Hmm.
So and then even your personal biases could also impact. So I think there are list of biases or list of bias that actually could impact your analysis. So it's
Hmm.
important to understand those limitations. That like it's funny. So I was talking to one of the security analysts from GE, and I was discussing with him about a mathematical model on predicting risk, and he said, "Hey, Vishal, this is the best model ever." And I think whenever I hear that word, I
Hmm.
tend to get a bit more skeptical because I'm a statistician from that point of view. So I said, "Hey, really? What? In which sense?" It's like he
Hmm.
said, I always rely on this model. This model is that much accurate, and I'll not name call the model or the source, but yeah, but I think so. I said, hey, let's Google and let's see where this particular model suck, and there was a better model which is like certain. I think it was 17% more efficient in predicting
Yeah.
risk, and he said, no, it's not true. That's crap.
Wow.
Whatever. So that's the problem, right? So we are
Yeah.
as smart as our knowledge in many ways. So those
Yeah.
biases are restricting us from analyzing. And I think we see this thing a lot. Like many times, even whenever I talk to even any client engagements, right? So we talk to them. it's their biases. Like they are sometimes they are too stuck on what should be the answer, and
Yeah.
that pretty much restricts someone from doing something.
Yeah, and that was definitely some point that was made in two of the videos that were brought up that Tal brings up, so we can like talk about that later. But this one, this tip and trick being the one that focuses on like the kind of biases that come during the last mile of decision making where
Right.
there's a lot of fear, and fear being such a paralyzing factor or just such an impacting factor on the decision making period,
Right.
so you have that as a fear by itself is a bias.
So I think so. In fact, the data science Q&A, I think it briefly covers some of the ways to like do this right. But I think one of the human answer to the next section. Next is a very mathematical model question, but one of the human answer is just to talk to a lot of discrete people to see if their answer fit into your answer or something. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty cool. I think and one of the suggestions, so like I always fear about this a lot, right? Whenever I say something is working, half of my brain is saying no, you are biased, right? So and then I don't want my influence to sort, and some in some ways intuition is good. Again, I'm not saying intuition is bad. Intuition, like it's definitely, but biases are not bad. Like biases are not good. So intuitions is good. So and it's a very slippery slope. What is the intuition versus vis-a-vis what's a bias, right? So predictability of, so I think that's something. If it's
Yeah,
an
that's why the
interesting
Q and A brings up resampling, and which gives you a lot of different test methods to use
right.
to try to figure out where you might have those blind spots.
Right. So you want to talk about resampling methods?
Well, I'm sure you have a lot more experience with them than I do.
So I think it's pretty much you take a test sample and test your model, and then see if the model is fitting, and then from there on resample it, and alter the model, and the idea being you want to do as much of cross validation as possible, so
Yeah.
that your model is applicable in as broader scenarios as possible. I think it's um, maybe last week there was a talk around multicollinearity or something. I think it's more along the lines of that
Mm-hmm.
eventually you want a perfectly fitting model, and resampling and pretty much gives you a lot of leverage basically in making sure that you evaluate the performance of a model. You understand, sort of, you make sure the model, you have done the modeling right. So it's a very cool technique, by the way, and the idea being that you want to make sure that that you have a right model for the test set. So resampling help pretty much hash it down, and just it kills and I think from the previous example, any biases. So if you have any predictable outcome, you want to just get rid of those. So
Mm-hmm.
resampling pretty much helps in that direction.
Yeah, and
And
there's a lot of challenges there. And the first video that Tal brings up, or the video of the week, um, I thought it was really good because for one, you get to see what an analytics club meetup is like, and
yes,
that's cool. But it
yes,
also, these are individuals who deal and struggle with these kind of biases and these kind of challenges all the time, and the processes that they have to go through, that they're dealing with. And so I thought it was really a very real capture of what that looks like on a business case with these different panelists that we have from the Future of Data meetup in Boston.
right. So I think it's a security panel. Or I think I agree with you, Maria. So Travis is Analytics Club's Boston lead. So he is making Boston Club happen. So he brought up an interesting, and Travis is from security background as well. So he brought up an interesting panel. And there was a practitioner, there was a consulting sort of a consultant, there was a startup. So it's a nice blend of how three different visionaries are looking at security as a problem. So one is a practitioner that's making sure the clients of say, Rapid7 is the company name. They can what he thinks about the security and how the paradigm of the security, and then the other guys from Booz Allen side was talking about like some of the behavioral security and all that, and the third guy is a security from Yaksa, and it was an interesting conversation on like it was interesting, like all the three folks were looking at security from totally different paradigms, and they
Yeah.
almost have the same soul of the problem, but the location is different from their reference location is different. The pain is the same, and it was funny. Like even after the session, I spoke to most of these guys about security paradigms, and again, like my biggest, like I'm coming from the business angle too because I talk to a lot of businesses. So and I shared my concern of, hey, either like one of the things that I suggested in the session was every important celebrity, they get about 25 threats every day. So should
Yeah.
they react on all the 25? And what are some of the proximal threat? Because threat level they're all the same, right? So now their core business is to be creative, be out there, be approachable, be visitable, right? So businesses are the same thing. Like they have to maintain their creative edge. They have to maintain the liberty of, and they're always like competing on the most innovative technique to surpass or bypass their competition and get to the clients quickly. In that context, how would sort of you stop someone from like, right? So security is one of those folks that and it was interesting that I wanted to take their take on like how to not get paranoid and still just keep the business sense intact, right? Because otherwise what will happen, business will start ignoring, right? if
Yeah.
if your doctor tells you that 1700 things that are wrong with you, you'll probably stop going to the doctor. So you just have to keep like just two or three things which are chewable. Then the doctor says, then probably the intimacy is still intact, right? He's not just making you feel bad about yourself that much that you say it's a headache to just go to that guy. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and then they even
Definitely a
touched
must check
upon
out.
it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I think definitely people must check out the this video.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
they even touched upon the aspect of talent and of, the employee and the relationship of the production of work, and having those environmental factors there.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, I thought that was interesting.
That was pretty cool. So now, quote of the week. Everybody gets so much information all day long, they lose their common sense. This is
Yeah.
beautiful. This is, I think, it's attack on the intuition again. So yes, I think that is true. So you need to have intuition too. I think that's what it's saying. It's relevant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So podcast of the week, Jody Cosmo from Innova. I think he's one of my favorite interviewees. So
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
he's a fun guy. I think like it was at that point I was throwing every question at him, and he was like very calm and composed, and he just pretty much navigated. And he talked about some of the interesting stuff of building an enterprise on analytics as a practice, what all needs to be done, what all he did. So it was again very fun guy, and I had a ball, and I think people should check out. So his perspective is he's running, so he's leading a analytics practice for a consulting company that is creating an interesting product. So on data analytics. So I think from that perspective, so he gives a very candid outlook on how to look at the industry, how to look at the client, what are some of the limitations he's seeing. So it just gives you a very quick holistic perspective on what all businesses are seeing and what all could do to fix those some of those problems, who you should hire, why you should hire, what kind of company you should build, and all that. So again, I think amazing guy, and I think probably I should invite him again, and have a follow on, because I think at that point I had a few more questions I want to ask him, and I think it's very interesting in conversation. Yeah, Maria.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. He talked about taking these methods of, and the experimentation that needs to be done to make changes in business, and having the employees be able to have the freedom to be able, to not be afraid so much of, experimenting, because some experiments need to be done in order to make progress and change. So
it's interesting.
He really brought that scientific method into it.
Oh yeah, he's like, again, very fun guy. So, fact of the week. Oh, in late 2011, IDC Digital Universe published a report indicating 1.8 zettabyte of data will be created that year. It's an old stat.
Yeah.
Wow, 1.8 zettabyte in 2011. I can imagine what would be maybe this today it would be in a day.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we should check that. So I'll probably check that stat out and post it on the description here. That's interesting. Wow. World
Yeah,
is
and then
full of
they're
data.
only measuring certain kinds of, or the prediction also takes into doesn't take into consideration any new developments that added to
Right.
it.
Yeah, interesting. So anyhow, this concludes our newsletter. So thank you everyone. And as I have not said today, that we are not coming up with Tau's new model by end of this month. So don't keep an eye out on this. So it's an exciting time. So anyhow, thank you everyone. And again, so if you're looking for any support in finding job or anything, I think go to Tau, sign up with Tau. It's a shameless plug, but I think it is making some impact. Some people are getting some interview calls, so it is definitely doing something. And I would urge you, and I think soon we will be releasing few more features for all of our members, so you guys you all could take advantage of some of the interesting thing that Tau could deliver. So keep an eye out, and see you next week on week 33 of what Tau could bring. Maria?
Yeah, this signing off.
Stay awesome everybody, and stay data driven. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you.
I thought I was sick of home, but actually I was homesick. Never really knew that I would have to grow up so quick. I'm so uncomfortable, don't know anybody here. Just a couple dudes that I met once, that's it. And I go into the booth feeling nervous. Got butterflies in my stomach like I'm so worthless. Is the mic on? I don't know how to work this. Inside I'm breaking down, I hope I'm not up on the